Tracy, does Tracy know she doesn't have to be a willing participant in this farce, that she could actually just break the fourth wall here and just acknowledge me and see me as I am?
Tracy is sitting here. She has scissors in one hand. She's literally cutting up daisies to put behind me, as if we don't have enough butterflies. But she knows who you are. She likes you. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls.
Great.
Wilbon's still at the spa, so I'm joined by our great friend, the host of the ESPN Daily Podcast, Mr. Pablo Torre. They like you. And we begin today with the Los Angeles Rams trading for Sony Michel, the familiar running back of the New England Patriots. The Rams have been devastated at running back with a season-ending injury to presumed starter Cam Akers, and they've got a bunch of unknown backs. Michel averaged 5.7 yards a carry in 9 games last year. Pablo, does trading for Michel solve the Rams' running back problem?
I think it does, Tony, but what's funny about this story to me is that lots of other smaller moves might have solved it too, because running back, as you know, I mean, to me, it's the most replaceable position in the NFL. That's not news to anybody. The Rams in particular, though, are a team that has taken guys like C.J. Anderson off the street and made them viable playoff starters. So they didn't need to do this. So what does it say, though, that they did do this? It tells me that all of the chips, Tony, every possible chip is moving to the center of the table. They could not be more all in on this season. They see even an upgrade, a minimal one in my mind, at running back. They see that as important because they're going for the Super Bowl, which is hosted, by the way, in L.A., of course, this year.
There are some people who say that the Rams should have waited to see who got cut. I don't think they should wait. I think Sony Michel is a professional running back, and they know him well. And let me get the statistics correct here, because in the Super Bowl a few years ago, he carried it 18 times for 94 yards and a touchdown against them. And the guy who beats you is always the guy you want. And by the way, to your point, if they have Super Bowl pretensions here, they might want to get a guy who in 3 playoff games that year had 6 touchdowns. I am so happy to hear you say this, because I normally sit, beside Wilbon, who's always telling me how the Arizona Cardinals, where he coincidentally owns a home, are so much better than the Rams. And I thought that when the Rams got Matthew Stafford, given the fact they have the number 1 defense anyway, when they got Stafford, I've said on this show, I think they're the Super Bowl team.
I think it's them or the Buccaneers in the NFC, Tony, which is no slight, of course, to the Rams. I think they're just as good as you say. And I had Seth Wickersham on ESPN Daily today to talk about Matthew Stafford and what he does for that offense. Sean McVay, get this, Sean McVay had to read defenses for Jared Goff. That was the issue in Los Angeles. Matthew Stafford is not a guy he needs to hold his hand through. Matthew Stafford is not just bringing a giant arm to that offense, which makes, of course, the running back position that much easier to play when that guy is under center. He brings a brain that we haven't really acknowledged because he played in Detroit, but Sean McVay is so excited about the brain and the arm of this guy, and I think he has every reason to be.
I'm just going to be quick on this and repeat it again. They already have the number 1 defense in points allowed and yards allowed. And they just brought in a terrific quarterback for Sean McVay, who knows what to do on offense. I think they're real good. I do.
So, speaking of the difference that a title and title contention can make, Tony, the world champion Bucks in the NBA, they awarded their head coach Mike Budenholzer a 3-year extension through 2025. So how should Coach Bud feel about getting extended after so many had him fired during the playoffs?
So, I never really understood the amount of heat that he was going to take, but I'll reference Wilbon again, because we went back and forth during the playoffs when things looked rather bleak for Milwaukee. And he said a number of times on this show, Milwaukee's the stupidest team in the NBA. And he held Budenholzer personally responsible and said if they don't win the title, this guy should get fired. So let's just look and see what happened, okay? How bad a job he did. They were down 0-2 against the Nets. They came back and they won. They were down 0-2 in the finals against Phoenix, and they came back and they swept Phoenix with superstars, I'm told all the time, Devin Booker and Chris Paul. They swept them in the last 4 games of the finals. Budenholzer had to have something to do with this.
Yes, and look, in Wilbon's defense, if Kevin Durant's foot is 1 centimeter behind the 3-point line instead of directly on it, his call on Budenholzer getting fired may have come true and no one would have really complained. But you're right about the finals in particular, Tony, because what he did was adjust. The knock on Mike Budenholzer was that he doesn't adjust. He doesn't do the switching defense. He doesn't bench Brook Lopez. He doesn't play Giannis at the 5. He doesn't play his starters enough. He did all of that, and it got him a title. And the biggest knock on Budenholzer, honestly, for being real about this, is that his appearance is that of a guy who just woke up on his couch at 3 a.m. because he's afraid of getting yelled at for not taking the trash out by his wife. He looked rumpled and a mess, but that same dude was in total control, and I have to applaud him for that.
Yeah, let me just say again, he won. People will say, oh, he had Antetokounmpo. Philadelphia had Embiid. They didn't win.
Yeah.
Denver had Jokic. They didn't win. This guy went out there and delivered. You know, I'm not saying he's the greatest coach in the world, but he's got a ring. Other people don't at the moment.
Better than we
move
thought.
on. Yes, the Houston Astros won last night to move to 74-52 on the season. That's the second best record in the American League. They're 4.5 games ahead of Oakland in the AL West, and they're about to get Alex Bregman back. Everyone hates the Astros, but they keep winning. Pablo, have the Astros sufficiently validated themselves yet?
So if I could address Astros fans here for a second. It's not that we thought, or at least I thought, that your team wasn't good without the cheating. What was so offensive about the cheating was that it was so involved and over the top and arguably unnecessary. So the idea that the Astros are a really good team, a really well-run organization, and have a farm system that should be applauded and all of that, Tony, all of that is still so. I think that we're losing the plot a little bit if we think that, okay, well, I guess they're actually redeemed here, because that, to me, was never the actual issue.
I'm going to go to the micro here if I could, and I'm going to settle on Dusty Baker. They fired their manager, they fired their general manager, and Dusty Baker came in. And last year, okay, they were under 500, and they were shell-shocked from what happened, but they were within one game of the World Series. They go to Game 7, I believe, against Tampa Bay in the ALCS. This year, where there are fans in the stands and they are getting ripped, particularly Altuve and Correa, they are getting killed everywhere they go. They're 7 over on the road, which is the hardest place to win. And I think Dusty Baker has been expert in guiding this team around. I would also point out, it's not the same team. They've only got 5 people left from the team that cheated. Only one pitcher, McCullers, is the only guy left from that, because everybody else got out of Dodge when they could. And the people who stayed have developed a hard shell about this and say, bring it on. I mean, I think if they get to the World Series against the Dodgers, for example, what great viewing that would be.
You know, you're so correct about Dusty Baker. I had sort of forgotten about his existence in all of this, but think about that day when he has to give the press conference in front of everybody. He has to take all of the arrows, all of the slings, and you think to yourself, there is no way that I would ever want that job. And there he is doing that job as well as anybody could imagine. But Tony, I want to move to the U.S. Open here because, well, what's left of it at least, because Serena Williams has now joined Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal in withdrawing due to injury. Now, Serena has been struggling with a torn hamstring that forced her to leave Wimbledon in the first set of the first round, as you remember, but she's also almost 40. She's been one short of tying Margaret Court's record of 24 majors since January of 2017 now. So where does this leave Serena's quest, Tony?
I think Serena is in a station running after a train that she's never going to catch. You know, she's going to be 40 next month. She's not playing in any more majors this year, and the majors got progressively worse. I think she reached the semis in Australia, the 4th round before losing at the French, out early at Wimbledon, and not even rolling in the U.S. Open, which is her best event. She made the semis last year, and the 2 years before that, she was in the finals. Next year at this time, she'll be almost 41 years old. You know who wins majors over 40 in tennis? Nobody. Tom Brady does. Phil Mickelson does. Nobody in tennis. The oldest woman to win a major in tennis is Serena Williams. In January of 2017, which I believe is 4 years and 7 months ago when she was 35, you need to tell me, as great as she is, you need to tell me why she's going to win another major going forward. Why?
Yeah, no, the reason is the one you alluded to, which is that we're now all suddenly very numb to the idea of, yeah, of course, 40-year-olds can win titles. Of course, everyone's doing that now. But you're right, not in this sport, not in a sport that is so tiring, both mentally, clearly, and also physically. It's exhausting. And I mourn for the U.S. Open, Tony, because Serena at that event, for as combustible and as controversial as it is, I love that. I love going to that thing. It's right over there in Queens. I love going there. But what we're seeing right now is somebody who honestly, look, and I say this with all the self-awareness that it's morbid, but like all she has to worry about is the obituary. And from that perspective, the first paragraph, we already think of her as the best of all time, right? Like Margaret Court has the record, but does anybody think Margaret Court is better than Serena, Tony?
No, they don't say that, but they would put Billie Jean King and Chris Evert and Martina Navratilova and Steffi Graf. They'd put her right in the same sentence with Serena. You get an argument from me on that, although not with Margaret Court. Chasing the record is honorable, but it's really, really daunting at that age. Let's take a break.
Yes.
Coming up, who would root against the poor Orioles tonight? Losers of 9 was first.
Toss up. Who would you rather see win tonight? Shohei Ohtani or the Orioles?
This isn't even close. It's Shohei Ohtani. I mean, I actually root for him more as a pitcher than I do as a hitter. He's 8-1 with a 2.79 ERA, and in July and August, Pablo, he's got the best ERA in baseball, 1.58, and he has 40 home runs.
Absurd.
He could win the Cy Young and the home run title. So everybody who's talking about Vlad Guerrero Jr. as the MVP, what? What are you talking about? And I like the Orioles. I've always liked the Orioles. But, you know, if they lose tonight, what is that? 19, 20, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They already posted 21 in 1988, and the 1961 Phillies posted 23 in a row. So go for the gusto. Keep losing.
Tony, yesterday I asked you what you liked about the Orioles. You mentioned the ballpark. Everyone says the ballpark. The ballpark is she has a really nice personality of compliments. You don't actually like the Orioles. You like the sort of structure around it. That's cool. Shohei Ohtani, though, is the story. You are 1 bazillion% correct. The guy has one of the most unhittable pitches in baseball. He has that splitter that strikes out everybody when he throws it at the end of the count. He has a slider that he's throwing more of. He's mixing that in more, fewer fastballs, more sliders. What he is doing, I feel like a broken record that is somehow not broken enough. Because everybody should be aware, what he is doing is so much more impressive than anything Babe Ruth has ever done. And I know there should be a lightning bolt from Mount Wilbon striking me down for being a prisoner of the moment and not appreciating history enough. But the idea that Shohei Ohtani could be the Cy Young winner and the MVP is insane. I'm rooting for that.
Next.
Toss up. Who would you rather see make the AL wild card? The A's or the Mariners?
So I've got skin in the game here. My friend Dave Sims does play-by-play for the Seattle Mariners. I admire Oakland. They do what they do every year without any money. But the better story here is Seattle. They haven't been in the playoffs in 20 years. It's the longest drought in all of North America in the 4 major sports. That's the better story. And remember the trade deadline when the GM traded away their best reliever and the other pitchers went crazy? Well, look what they've done lately. Lately, while Oakland is 2-8, Seattle is 6-2, and nobody saw that coming. They beat Seattle twice. So let's root for them because we can't name anybody on that squad.
That's right. And look, the guys that I can name are the guys they acquired, and I learned those names today because I wanted to fess up to being one of the people who looked at the GM, Jerry Dipoto, and said, this guy has no idea what he's doing. But Abraham Toro, the infielder, Joe Smith, the reliever, they have been good. They've been real good. They had another starter that's been helpful to them. Every compliment I have for the Oakland A's, Tony, involves how they don't pay their players anything, and I just don't want to reinforce that as like a virtue. Like, they're a terribly owned team. They may be well run, but they're owned terribly. The Mariners, though, 2001, as you said, 116 wins, the best regular season team of all time. Let's give that franchise more credit.
Not since. Haven't had a sniff of it since. And it's not like Ken Griffey Jr. and A-Rod are walking through that door. That's it.
No.
Pablo took a beating. Let's take one last break, but still to come. Urban Meyer picks his starting quarterback. Will Pablo be forced to eat his tie?
Oh, God. And Vic Fangio also selects his starter. Is it going to be Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater?
Is maybe that if she were an up-and-coming player, since the French 2018, she has more match wins, more rounds of 16, more semis, more finals than anyone. Naomi Osaka, the only one to tie, and that's just in the final appearances. So if she were up-and-coming, we'd be like, this is the strongest women's player in the game since 2018. But because it's been so long since she won, we're all thinking instead, is this the way down? I think she's got it in her.
Let me ask you point blank, Sarah, though. Does she need it? She's already unanimously thought of as the greatest of all time. Does she need this?
No, not at all.
Frank?
But she wants it.
I think she wants it because of a daughter, because she hasn't won a major since giving birth. Remember, Kim Clijsters won a major here at the U.S. Open after giving birth. I think that means a lot to Serena. But with her out, Federer out, Nadal out, puts more of a focus now on Djokovic on the men's side, and obviously Naomi Osaka on the women's
Monica,
side.
have you thought about who's going to play you in the movie yet?
Oh, yeah, it would
playing
be
me?
Yvonne Orji, the actress who plays Molly in Insecure. But to that question, I do
can do that. I like
because
that.
otherwise
I
we'll
see
always
it.
say,
Sanaa
"Oh, she didn't
Latham.
get it."
We'll move on.
Latham.
NFL news of the day in Cincinnati. Bengals paying and saying Joe Burrow will play a limited number of snaps preseason game number 3. It's 9 months since he tore ACL and MCL, injured meniscus and PCL. Looked like the team was maybe not going to play him. Then he maybe politic for himself. Coach Zach Taylor said today Burrow's politicking did not factor into the decision. This is what's best for everybody. Frank Isola, you think it's wise for preseason game number 3 to be Burrow's return from this injury he had?
Yeah, he's been out for a long time. He wants to play, so I respect and appreciate that. I think it's smart for the team to put him out there. Here's going to be the biggest key. Can you keep him upright? He was sacked 32 times last year. The problem isn't Joe Burrow. It's that terrible offensive line. I'd be a little worried about that, but you know the strategy going into this is get rid of the football quickly. He wants game reps. To me, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a smart play.
And that's the point. They rebuilt this offensive line some to protect him more from last year because not only was he pressured a lot, but he was very bad, worse in the league when he was pressured. So I think what Joe Burrow needs is more snaps, more reps that maybe don't come in the regular season.
Right.
If this offensive line is indeed improved, show a little bit of it in the preseason and then feel comfortable going into the regular season.
Completely agree. They went out and acquired veteran right tackle Riley Reif. They drafted 3 offensive linemen. He needs time with them the same way they need time together. And I understand the injury fears. That's how it always is in football. We have this game every year. Do you play him? What if they get hurt in meaningless time?
Yep.
If he's not going to be protected now, he's not going to be protected later. At least get him out there. Also, mentally, he said the biggest concern for him is that when defensive players get too close, he gets a little too nervous because of that injury. He needs to just get some of those reps in before the season starts.
So is this unanimous, Monica? You're all right? I mean, preseason game 3, which used to be preseason game 4, is when it's guys who haven't made the team yet who are giving everything they have, and they're trying to go out and kill a quarterback.
I mean, scared money don't make no money, and injuries are definitely a part of football. I mean, if the logic was he's going to get hurt, you shouldn't have played him last year because that line wasn't much better during the regular season. I also will say I don't know that he's going to go against the Dolphins once, and so there's really never a right time to put a guy back coming off of injury. You got to get in there, get baptized by fire.
All right. 2 other coaching decisions today in naming quarterbacks. Let's start with Denver. Naming Teddy Bridgewater Week 1 starter over Drew Lock. And in Jacksonville, not surprising, but it is official. Trevor Lawrence will start Week 1. Israel, any of those decisions jump out at you?
No, the Trevor Lawrence one, pretty obvious there. I know Gardner Minshew has said he wasn't going to use the restroom, at least not number 2, until he was fighting off this Trevor Lawrence, because number 2 is not an option for him. So he can finally take that break he was looking for. I think with Trevor Lawrence, you would have really wanted to see. You would have really wanted to see him get into the end zone in the preseason, but, you still know what you had. It seems like you know what you have there. With Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock, it's crazy interesting because you've got John Elway making another poor quarterback decision in Drew Lock. And I think that was pretty obvious here. Like last year, he was first in the league in air yards per pass, right? So he's flinging it out there, but it's not resulting in much. He's getting intercepted a lot. His QBR is down there. And so it just kind of feels like Drew Lock is another failed experiment for John Elway. And man, that's not a good thing. Joining Paxton Lynch on that.